Here's a question I want you to sit with for a moment. You've been working hard. You're saving some money, maybe not as much as you'd like, but you're putting something away each month. Your savings balance is going up. So why does it feel like you're falling behind? The answer is inflation. And the reason most people don't fully understand it is that it's invisible. Nobody sends you a bill. Nobody calls you up and says, just to let you know, your money is worth less than it was last year. It just happens, quietly, consistently, and by the time you notice, the damage is already done. By the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what inflation is, how it's eating your money right now, and most importantly, what you can do about it. This is one of the most important things you'll ever learn about money. Let's get into it. At its core, inflation is the rate at which prices rise over time. When inflation is high, the things you buy, food, energy, rent, petrol, cost more. When inflation is low, prices are rising more slowly. When inflation is negative, which is called deflation, prices are actually falling. But that's rare and has its own problems. The Bank of England targets an inflation rate of 2% per year. That's their goal, a slow, manageable rise in prices that's compatible with a healthy growing economy. But here's where it gets personal. If prices are rising at, say, 3% a year, which is where the UK CPI rate sat in late 2025, and your salary is only going up by 2%, you are, in real terms, taking a pay cut. Even if the number on your payslip goes up, if it doesn't keep pace with inflation, your purchasing power, what that money can actually buy, is falling. That is a quiet, hidden form of getting poorer. And it affects almost everyone. This is the part that makes most people uncomfortable when they actually do the maths. Let's say you have £10,000 sitting in a savings account. Not bad, you've worked hard for that. But your savings account is paying, let's say, 4% interest. Meanwhile, inflation is running at 3.4%, which is exactly what the UK CPI measured at in December 2025. So what's your real return? The difference between your interest rate and inflation, roughly 0.6%. You're barely breaking even. Now imagine your savings account is paying just 1%. Very common on many high street bank accounts. Inflation at 3.4%. Your real return? Minus 2.4%. You are losing money in real terms, even as the balance ticks upward. Over 5 years, with inflation persistently above your savings rate, the real value of that £10,000 could drop by 10, 15, 20%. Thousands of pounds, gone. Not stolen. Not invested badly. Just quietly eroded by inflation. This is why keeping large amounts of money in a low-rate account is never the safe option people think it is. It's just a slower way of losing. Let's look at wages. UK average earnings growth has been relatively strong in recent years, often running above inflation during the post-pandemic recovery. But over the long run, for most workers, pay rises rarely consistently outpace inflation. The Resolution Foundation and the Office for National Statistics both track something called real wages, wages adjusted for inflation. And the data consistently shows that for many UK workers, real wages have been stagnant or declining for much of the past 15 years, aside from brief periods of recovery. What does that mean practically? If your salary was £30,000 in 2010 and it's now £38,000, that sounds like solid growth. But if inflation has averaged 3% a year over that period, your real purchasing power hasn't increased nearly as much as those numbers suggest. In some scenarios, it may barely have moved at all. This is why negotiating your salary, and negotiating it in line with or above inflation, is a genuine wealth-building strategy, not just a nice to have. Inflation is caused by a combination of factors. Here are the main ones, explained simply. Demand pull inflation. When too much money is chasing too few goods. If everyone suddenly has more to spend, say, after a period of government stimulus, businesses can raise prices because demand outstrips supply. Cost push inflation. When the cost of production rises, businesses pass that on to consumers. The post-2022 energy crisis is a perfect example. Energy prices shot up due to the conflict in Ukraine, which pushed up the cost of almost everything, because almost everything requires energy to produce. Imported inflation. The UK imports a huge amount of what it consumes. When the pound weakens against other currencies, imported goods become more expensive, and that feeds through into consumer prices. Wage price spirals. When workers successfully demand higher wages to compensate for rising prices, businesses often raise prices further to cover those wage costs, which can create a cycle. The Bank of England tries to control inflation primarily by adjusting interest rates. Higher rates make borrowing more expensive, which tends to reduce spending and slow price rises. It's a blunt instrument, but it's the main lever they have. Right, the practical bit. What can you actually do? Strategy 1. Don't leave large amounts of cash earning below inflation interest. Shop around for the best easy access savings rates and check them regularly. Rate change. A rate that was great 6 months ago might now be beaten by a newer account. Use comparison sites to stay on top of this. Strategy 2. Invest. Historically, equities, stocks and shares have outperformed inflation over the long run by a significant margin. The FTSE 100 and S&P 500 have both averaged returns well above inflation over multi-decade periods. Inside a stocks and shares ISA, those returns are completely tax-free. This isn't risk-free, markets go up and down in the short term. But over 10, 20, 30 years, investing in a diversified portfolio has consistently beaten inflation. Keeping everything in cash has not. Strategy 3. Invest in yourself. Learning a skill that makes you more valuable, whether that's a professional qualification, coding, financial analysis, project management, can boost your earning power above the rate of inflation. Strategy 4. Own real assets. Property, for example, has historically risen broadly in line with or above inflation over the long term. If you own your home, you're partly protected against housing cost inflation in a way that renters are not. Strategy 5. If you're employed, negotiate. Don't accept below-inflation pay rises without a conversation. Your employer knows what inflation is doing. Make sure your salary reflects it. Inflation is real, it's persistent, and it affects everyone. But it's not unbeatable. The people who understand it, who move their money out of low-rate accounts, who invest for the long term, who negotiate their pay, are the ones who come out ahead. You now know more about inflation than the vast majority of people in this country. Use that knowledge. If this opened your eyes, hit the like button and subscribe for more content like this. And tell me in the comments, are you earning above inflation on your savings right now? Most people aren't. Let's change that. See you next time.